guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Esty, and on this channel I have weekly videos on my pre-nursing journey and on my life as a wife and a mom to 3. You're going to see on this channel videos on study tips and resources, and also just on lifestyle and motivation. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel, and you can turn on those post notifications as well. Today I am going to be sharing with you how to prepare for the ATI TEAS reading section and how to get a passing score on your first attempt. So I will break down just the general flow of the reading section. Then I will break down the 3 types of questions that you'll see on the TEAS reading section, and just give a few tips on how you can study a little bit better for those sections. I'll also give a few tips on how I studied, the books that I used, and the online free resources as well that I would recommend for getting ready for the TEAS reading section. All right, so let's dive right in. First of all, let's talk about kind of the general breakdown of the TEAS reading section. So you have 64 minutes and you have 53 questions for those 64 minutes. So you have a little bit over a minute for each question that you're given on the reading section. And out of those 53 questions, 47 of them are scored and then 6 are unscored. Now, just like every other section on the TEAS test, you don't know which ones are going to be scored and which ones are going to be unscored. So just make sure that you put your best effort into every single question. Now I'll get into the 3 types of questions that you're going to see on the reading section. So the first type of question that you are going to see has to do with integrating knowledge and ideas. There are 11 questions that are going to have to do with the integration of knowledge and ideas. So you're going to have to analyze the information that's given you, whether that's from looking at a graph or reading a passage. You're going to have to analyze it and then make inferences based on what you see in the passage. So this could mean that you are comparing and contrasting 2 different types of passages, or maybe 2 different types of graphs. You also should know the difference between a primary source and a secondary source. So a primary source is basically a first-hand account of a topic, or coming from people who have a direct connection to the source. And then a secondary source is a source that is like one step away from a primary source. And so it's a source that is not a first-hand account or directly connected to the information, but they're reporting what somebody else experienced or found. So make sure you know the difference between a primary source and a secondary source, because sometimes you'll be asked questions based on that. Now, when you come across these types of questions that have to do with the integration of knowledge and ideas, make sure that you read the questions very carefully and just take note of the author's central ideas and what evidence they use to support it. You can take note if it's a primary source or a secondary source. Those are all some things to take notice of when you're reading these types of questions. All right, so the second type of question has to do with craft and structure of a passage. So you're going to see about 14 questions out of the 53 that have to do with craft and structure. So these types of questions have to do with the style of writing, how the writing is structured, noticing whether the author is coming from a subjective point of view or an objective point of view. Now, a subjective point of view just means it's based on the author's opinion. An objective point of view would be something that is based on fact or based on scientific evidence. So make sure you know the difference between a subjective point of view and an objective point of view. Now, to study for these types of questions, you are going to want to make sure that you know the different styles of writing. So there's basically 4 different styles of writing that you could see. There is expository writing, narrative writing, persuasive writing, and technical writing. So expository writing explains the topic. Narrative writing describes a series of events. Persuasive writing uses arguments to prove a point, and technical writing has to do with explaining difficult subject material or scientific material accurately. Now, on nursetongue.com, she describes these 4 different types of writing styles, and she also gives examples of them, so that is very helpful. Another thing that's closely related to the 4 types of writing styles is rhetorical intent. That can be entertainment, expressive writing, informational writing, and persuasive writing. Again, I would really highly recommend nursechung.com, which I've linked below, to describe these different types of writing and to study up and make sure you're familiar with these styles of writing. So finally, as you are answering questions that have to do with craft and structure, you're also going to want to make sure that you are familiar with the structure of a passage. There can be cause and effect structure, comparison and contrast, descriptive writing, a problem and solution, and there also can be a sequential passage that describes what happens in a sequence. So you'll want to make sure you understand those different types of text structure as well. All right, finally, so the third type of question that you will see on the ATI TEAS reading section is key ideas and details. Now in this section, you'll have 22 questions. So this is the biggest chunk of questions that you are going to have. Now, these types of questions are kind of what it sounds like. You're going to need to pay close attention to the details that are in a passage and then be able to use those details to come to conclusions. So these questions can cover things like identifying a sequential pattern in a passage, so being able to line up in order details that you're given in a passage. These questions can also have to do with summarizing and condensing the details that you're given into kind of a short synopsis. Some of these questions have to do with obeying directions that are given to you. So for example, when I took the TEAS test, I had a couple questions where I was given a map and then a key to a map, and then answer questions about the map using that key. You're also sometimes going to have to identify what's the central theme of a passage, what's the evidence that's given to support that main idea. So when you're preparing for these types of questions about the key ideas and details, you want to make sure that you're reading the passage very thoroughly and that you're really looking out for what is the main idea of this passage, what are the supporting details, what arguments is the author making, and what is the sequence of events. Now I'm just going to give a few broad overview suggestions for what worked for me to prepare for the reading section. So first of all, I'm going to share with you the books that I use to study. So I have 2 books that I use and would definitely recommend. This is my top pick for sure. And if you've watched any of my other TEAS test videos, I recommend this in every single one of them. So this is the ATI TEAS Secret Study Guide. On the reading section, it's kind of short and sweet. There's 18 pages in here on how to study and prepare for the reading section, but I feel like it really is very comprehensive and helpful. And then it also in the back has practice tests as well. So I use this to prepare. I also had this book put out by McGraw-Hill. It's 5 practice TEAS tests. This is also very helpful as well. So I use these 2 books to prepare. There's also a lot of great free online materials. So I'm going to link below several study guides that I found very helpful for the reading section. I'm also going to link a couple free tests just to give you a little extra practice, and they're free, so you can't really lose there. All right, so when you come to the TEAS reading section, there's a few tips that I do have. So first of all, make sure that you read the passage or the graph that you're given really closely, taking mental notes of what is the main point of this passage, what style of writing is it, how is the passage structured. So then once you've read through once, then what I did is I then went to the questions and answered each question referring back to that passage as I needed to. As you're working through these questions and as you're reading passages, try to be as thorough as possible, but probably you're going to come to some questions that you're going to be stumped on. I definitely did. So when you come to those questions that you really have no idea what the answer is, take out the answers that you know are incorrect for sure, and then from the answers that are left, try to make an educated guess on what would be the best answer. So if you follow this process, instead of just randomly guessing, you at least have a better chance of getting that answer correct. And what I also did is I would just answer the question even if I was totally stumped using that process of elimination. And then once I finished the whole section, so once you finish like the whole reading section, go back to those questions that you were stumped on and use any extra time that you do have to check those answers and see if you feel good about that answer that you've chosen. Finally, you're going to see quite a few questions that have graphs, data, and it's going to look a lot like a science question or a math question. But again, these questions are on the reading section because they want you as a potential, future registered nurse to be able to look at information and analyze it and then identify what it is saying and to know how to use that information. So make sure that you read the instructions on those types of questions very carefully as well to make sure that you're not missing anything. So if you're prepping to take the TEAS test, I hope this was helpful for you. Let me know in the comments below what program you are applying to. I would love to connect with you on here. If you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.